Nour, I've done it. I finally added flesh to my character's back.
What have you been writing all this time?
He used to be a skeleton, and now I have fleshed out his back. Story. Not the rest of him, just his back. He's an abomination.
Okay. Hey guys, Nour here, and here's how to flesh out your character's backstory. But first, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to my channel, and ring the bell icon so you can get notified whenever I upload new videos. Let's get started. A backstory is really important for your story. I mean, without it, we wouldn't get to know your characters. Like, really get to know your characters. Imagine that your character is miserable, but we never find out why. Or imagine that they get triggered by a certain phrase, but we aren't told why. This not only frustrates us, but it also makes us feel like your character isn't well-rounded. They don't feel real like you and me. Their behavior is questionable. I mean, if anything, they should just be locked up with other questionable weirdos. So giving them a backstory is a must, and you could start by creating an initial condition. What's an initial condition? It's when you let the reader know how your character used to be. For example, your main character Tammy was a happy kid who came from a happy family and had loving parents. That's her initial condition. She wasn't always miserable. She had a great life. Now, an initial condition can literally be anything. Tammy had the best boyfriend, or Tammy had the best job, or Tammy had an innocent upbringing. Whatever the initial condition is, it needs to be something that brought your character peace and joy. And of course, the initial condition doesn't last forever because, well, then your character would be boring if they were perfectly content. Which brings me to my next point. Have something life-changing happen that destroys or disrupts your character's perfect happiness. For instance, Tammy's parents died, or Tammy's boyfriend cheated, or Tammy's job shut down, or Tammy's childhood became ravaged by war. So it just started raining, so if you could hear it a little bit, sorry. Keep in mind that I'm not talking about your story's conflict. The conflict might have nothing to do with your character's backstory. While your character grew up fast because of war in her country, her current conflict might be as simple as dealing with divorce. The conflict has nothing to do with your character's backstory. The backstory is simply something that influenced your character's personality and shaped them to be who they are today. As a result, your backstory should be tied to how your character acts and reacts to things. If Tammy's childhood was full of war, then perhaps divorcing her husband feels similar to the loss she felt when her family and friends died in the war. Perhaps she breaks down because she feels like she is losing another person in a permanent way. So even though the conflict and the backstory have nothing to do with each other, they end up working off each other. Also, don't dump your entire character's backstory in one single page or chapter. Trickle out more and more information about what happened to your character throughout the story to give insight. This way, your reader doesn't feel overwhelmed with all the information, and you naturally share the character's backstory over the span of several chapters, if not the entire book. Now, even though I said that your conflict doesn't have to directly correlate with your backstory, that doesn't mean that your backstory should be random and boring. For example, no one cares if Tammy used to be a cook but then decided to become a dragon trainer instead, because that's not really exciting, and on its own, it doesn't move the story forward. So make sure your backstory is more than just a simple character statement. Make sure it's exciting and in-depth. Really have your character's backstory figured out, otherwise the backstory wouldn't affect your character's actions, and it is a must that it does. So have the backstory motivate your character's current actions and decisions, even if those actions and decisions are sometimes flawed or irrational. So if your character ends up having a panic attack when her husband takes the coffee maker with him, you can attribute it to her struggle of losing things as a child during the war. Now, every time she loses something else, her mind goes back to the war, to losing her house and her toys and her innocence. See what I'm saying? The conflict doesn't deal with the war, and losing the coffee maker is nothing. But Tammy's backstory makes her actions justified or at least understood. So no matter what backstory you choose to go with, make sure it affects your character on an emotional and personal level. They didn't just lose their father at the age of 6, they gained a fear of death. They didn't just lose their high school boyfriend, they gained a distrust for boys. They didn't just lose a competition, they gained a sense of failure. They didn't just lose a leg to a shark, they gained a fear of the ocean. See where I'm going with this? And because of this, their personality affects the main conflict. So those are my tips for you. I would love to know, what backstory are you concocting for your main character? Let me know in the comments. How have you broken their spirit? How will you mend their pain? Sorry, my inner author is showing. There you have it, how to flesh out your character's backstory. And if you haven't joined my Discord server, make sure you do so. The link is in the description below. That way you can join me and chat with other writers. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like, check out my others, and subscribe to support my channel. And remember, Nour for president!